Welcome, everyone, to the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where investors with a special emphasis on couples begin, continue, and deepen their journey to financial freedom together using the powerful vehicle of real estate investing to do it. Today, we've got a treat. We've got Mr. Jerome Myers in the house today. Jerome is a preeminent authority on dream realization, a believer that dreams can and should be real. Jerome left corporate America when he realized that his role offered financial gain, but not much significance. He's the founder and head coach of Myers Methods and has been featured in Black Enterprise, Business Insider, and numerous other podcasts. After building a highly profitable division of a Fortune 500 company, Jerome decided to leave the rat race to get away from what seemed to be the endless slew of layoffs. He has developed a system for existing corporate America and creating a life of impact. Today, he and his company help other apex performers find their calling and live every day on purpose by harnessing the power of his model for a centered life, what he calls the red pill. Jerome and his firms can guide any individual from a monotonous, uninspiring existence to a life of fulfillment and impact. Jerome, honored to have you on, man. How are things today?
Derek, Sophie, I'm just so grateful to be with you guys. It's going to be an amazing conversation. I think the concept of your show is so cool. And, the real estate thing where a lot of spouses just go out or partners go out and build a thing on their own, a lot of times it leads to fighting, right? Because people aren't aligned. They don't think it should be done that way, blah, 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 blah. They're growing apart instead of growing together. And so the mission that you two have set out on is really special. And I think it's making a big impact in the space. So thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yes, absolutely, sir. Thank you so much for coming on. And it's really funny you mentioned that, because I always tell couples, or at least individuals who are trying to power ahead and do this themselves, I tell them, all right, what's going to happen if you do this on your own and things don't do well, right? And you're in this relationship where one spouse just doesn't even know, right? And let's say things go bad. That's easy. That's easy to see how that's going to work out in your relationship. But what happens if things go really well? And one spouse says, hey, or one spousal partner says, hey, you know what? I'm going to take this income and I'm going to reinvest into more property. And the other one says, well, wait a minute, we made all this money from you spending all this time and energy away from me and the family. Why don't we enjoy it? And so either way, if you succeed or don't succeed, that's a problem, right? If your spouse isn't on the same page with you. So that's why we're so passionate about this mission that we're on, with helping couples get on the same page first, understand what the big goal is, what is that's out there, and even understand what the possibilities could even be. And that's where we're headed. So,
and we also want to emphasize that, we want to share the message of holistic living. Partnership can be business and relationship, and it needs to be an integrated, full-blown, let's get on this ride together kind of journey. And so that's what we're here really for, is to share and spread that message.
Yes. So Jerome, this show is about you, man, not about us. So let's talk about you. Okay. Yes. I want to first find out how you got into real estate investing in the first place, where you got that spark from, and tell us a little bit about what you went through to get there.
Yeah, the spark came sophomore year in college. Me and my buddy Duran are sitting on the stoop, and from time to time we would pass the Black Enterprise back and forth, maybe the Robb Report and Worth and a few other magazines. And today's conversation was about the fact that I had rent. It was $395. I had two roommates. They were paying $395 a piece. He lived downstairs. He was paying $395. They had two roommates paying $395. And so when we did the math, the owner was making $700,000 a year top line, right? But we never saw him and we never talked to him. We were like, what in the world is going on? I don't need 700,000. I just need 70. We're college students, right? 70,000 would be amazing lifestyle. And he was like, but how do you do it? How do you buy a property like this, right? Is this a company? Is it a person? How does it work? I'm the son of a soldier, stay-at-home mom. So we didn't have any people with multi-million-dollar real estate portfolios coming over to the cookout. And so it just kind of stopped right there. because I didn't know who to go talk to. It wasn't like there were podcasts at that time. I couldn't go grab a book. I didn't even know what a RIA was. So if they had one, I didn't know what that was. And so I followed the American dream, right? You get into a good school, get good grades so you can get a good job. And then you get 2.5 kids and the white picket fence and 2 dogs and a car. And you got a 30-year mortgage. And then eventually, if you're lucky, you get to retire and live for 10 years and then you die after
Right.
working for 40. And I was just like, I don't want to do that. And so fast forward to the end of my corporate career, I'm get a phone call at 4:55 on December 24th of 2015. And the call goes something like this. Hey, Jerome. Yeah, so I decided we're going to lay him off. I was like, no, we're not.
Oh.
Like, that can't possibly be the answer. He's like, yeah. We've been going back and forth about this for a couple of weeks. And the fact of the matter is we're going to lay him off. And I said, well, and he said, Jerome, this isn't a discussion. The negotiations are over. I've made a decision. Now you got to decide whether or not you're going to be a part of it or, you don't want to be a part of it. And he's like, you can pick your soccer team or your kickball team and you can go off into the new year and do this thing again, or you can have somebody do it for you. It's totally up to you. And he said, but what I will tell you is that it's 5:00 on Christmas Eve. I'm going to spend the rest of the year with my family. I'll talk to you in the new year. And then it goes boop, boop, boop. If you got an iPhone, you know what that sounds like, what that sound means.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at my phone and I'm like, okay, now what? Right? Because I'd never been in a space where I had to lay people off. And I was like, how can I make this process as objective as possible? So we went through and figured out all these productivity metrics and so on and so forth. And so I didn't eat, couldn't really sleep. In fact, I decided that I just hated the holidays at that point. And so I spent from Christmas to New Year's figuring out who's going to have a job. And then we communicated that. And I told myself, hey, I'll never do this again. And they're making me do this. And I'm not a bad person. And so on and so forth.
Yeah, rationalizing
so-
like anyone else would, this is
Right.
a terrible thing. Yeah.
Right. And the timing I thought was even worse. And so then I found myself the next year, right before Black Friday, saying, hey, don't spend all of your money on Black Friday. Save some of your money. And so it was at that point, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I dropped out. And so I was like, what am I going to do? Like, what do I do now? And so I've been lending some money privately as for people who are doing fix and flips. And I was thinking about, well, maybe I can go get that dream off the shelf from college. Maybe I can go be an apartment owner. And so I was like, okay, well, we just built a $20 million business. I had 175 employees on my team. Like, of course, people are be willing to lend me $1 million to go buy a building. And so I found my building on LoopNet and I put together my 54-page business plan and I walk in the bank and I said, I need $1 million to buy this building. And they said, yeah, no. Like, what do you mean? And you were picking with me before we started recording, right? And I said, well, I got an engineering license and a project management professional and I got my MBA and all of the letters. And they're like, yeah, okay, that's great. Have you bought a deal of similar size and executed the same business plan?
Yeah.
And I said, you got me there. I don't have that. It's like, well, we're not going to give you $1 million to go buy the building. And so I was like, oh, these guys are just not in tune with the times. They don't know what they're talking about. So I went to the next bank and same thing. And then I went to the next one. And after 10 banks, I realized that they weren't going to give me any money. So I tried hard money. It's like, yeah, there's not enough meat on the bone for this deal. So we're not going to lend to you. And then I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And so I was like, well, I've been lending money to people who are rehabbers. They aren't that much smarter than me, right? I can figure it out. So I flipped on HGTV and thought I'd be a house flipper. And so did a few of those deals. And I'm sitting on the stoop and a guy pulls up in his white Dodge Ram and he hops out. He's like, hey, bud, I want to check out your finishes. We're going to do one down the street. I was like, sure, come on in. I was proud, right? It's a 1920s build. We got, what do we have? We had about 1,600 square feet. We redid everything. It was a $90,000 budget. And he walks in. He's like, you took the wall out. You got the island and the sink in the island. You great tile. You refinished the floors. And he's getting ready to walk out. And he says, hey, do you know anything about that building behind the Chimbo Mart? I was like, the Chimbo Mart? Yeah, the 23 unit. I was like, yeah, that one. He said, I'm going to make an offer on it later today. I was like, oh my gosh, you're the guy I've been looking for. The banks told me I needed a partner, and there's no way you're going to go buy that building if you don't have experience. You don't own any units. And he looked at me, he said, I might own something. I was like, look, don't leave me out of the deal. I want to buy that building, but the bank said I need a partner, and you're that guy. And he kind of looked at me. He said, what are you going to bring to the table? I said, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Just don't leave me out. And he kind of like scrunched up his face and looked at me again. He's like, what are you going to bring to the table? I said, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Just don't leave me out the deal. You're the guy I've been looking for. And so he asked me a third time. And of course, I didn't change my answer because I was convinced that just because he was walking through my rehab, he knew what I could do and what I could bring to the table. I had no real clear understanding of how to market myself or to interview to be a partner or any of that stuff. And so he walks out, and this is on a Wednesday. And so I'm convinced Friday he's going to call me, right? Friday comes and go, no phone call. Goes through the weekend. I was like, all right, he had to get through the weekend. Monday is the day this guy's going to call me, and nothing. Wednesday comes and goes, and then I look and I realize he didn't even have my phone number. So there's no way he could call me, right? And so then Friday comes and goes. And then the next Tuesday, one of the guys that I used to lend money to hits me. He said, I got an opportunity to be a general contractor on that property you brought up back in January. I told them I was only comfortable doing the deal if you were a part of it. I was like, the 23 unit? He's like, yeah. And when are we meeting? I'm all the way in on this. And so the next day we had the meeting, and it was the three of us. And then the broker came into the deal, and then a property manager came into a deal. And I was fortunate enough to be selected as asset manager, which meant when the brokerage house did their press release about the deal selling, that my name was in the paper. And because my name was in the paper, the people who were lending money wanted to know what else we had in pipeline, if we could have lunch to show me their products, and to ask me about the opportunity to refinance that deal after we got done with our construction. And I knew nothing more than I did when I tucked in my 54-page business plan. But because we closed the deal, and I had some partners, they were ready to talk to me. And so I've rambled for a long time, but that was my journey to getting into multifamily.
Wow.
That's incredible, dude. That's it doesn't get more self-made than that, man. So congratulations. That's good stuff, dude. It could tell that there was a will and a way. I wanted to back up a little bit, Jerome, because you mentioned all of this story. You brought the story up, and you took us on a journey of what you were doing. But you know what I want to learn about is where this get up and go came from. Because that very first thing that you mentioned, you were talking with your buddy, right? And you're like, dude, we're paying rent to this guy. Like, where did that come from? And where did all this drive come from to like go into corporate America and just basically try to add value, just do what you knew best, right? To try to find some way to succeed in this world. Where did that come from?
I think it comes from a conversation I had with my mom in the front yard when I was 4 or 5. My favorite day was Thursday. It was trash day. And so I could hear the trash truck from our house. It was the third in the cul-de-sac, and I could hear the trash truck coming down the main road. And I start getting excited and giddy. And so I would see him stop at the first house and then the second house. And, you know, at this point, Lonnie was looking for me. And so he'd be hanging off the back of the truck, and he'd look around the edge to see me running towards the truck in the yard. And I mean, it was like art, Derek, right? He'd hop off the truck, and he'd do a little thing to flip the cap off the top of the trash can. It'd spin around like a quarter, fall flat. And then he'd grab the trash can, do a little pirouette, and dump the trash in the back of it, right? And then after he did that, he spinned it back to the curve, and it never fell over. It would always hit just right. And then he would look at me and he'd give me the finger point, like the gun, and he'd do this. And I go crazy and start doing the honking of the horn thing. And he'd pull the lever and the trash would get crushed and all the noise would be made. And I would just go crazy. And so then I would look up at I looked at my mom at this particular day and I said, Mommy, I want to be a trash man when I grow up. And she said, baby, do you not like your Nikes and your Jordache jeans and your t-shirts and all the things, all your activities like football and t-ball and all the stuff? And she was like, I was like, yeah, Mommy, of course. Yeah, I like that. She said, well, if you're a trash man, you probably won't be able to have those things or be able to buy them for your kids because you have to pick a career. You have to get a job that pays for the lifestyle that you want to live. And it was like all of the innocence in my body was sucked out of me at that point because, you know, Lonnie was making art, right? He enjoyed his professional career where my dad would work a Carolina half day. And I know you guys are on the West Coast, so you might not know what a Carolina half day is. Carolina half day is you work from 6 to 6. You just pick which 6 you work, right? And so he was a commanding officer in the military, so he would go to PT and then not come back home until 6. And so in the fall, late fall and winters, he'd go to work when it's dark, come back home when it's dark. So if I wanted to play catch or if I wanted to eat dinner because I had to come in when the street lights came on, I couldn't do that because he wasn't home yet because he was working so much. And he afforded an amazing lifestyle for us, right? But he wasn't there. And I didn't see him hanging off the back of the truck crushing trash. So it wasn't like the coolest thing in the world, but that moment informed a decision that I made when I was in high school. So I was talking to Mr. Ayers and I said, hey, he was my AP physics teacher. I said, Mr. Ayers, I don't know if I want to be a psychologist or an engineer. I like solving problems and I don't know if I want to do it with people or with math and science. And he said, well, you could do both, Jerome. And he said, but one pays very differently than the other. And so 18-year-old me went back to 5-year-old me. I was like, well, this is an easy decision, right? Because mom said I got to get a job that's going to afford the lifestyle I wanted to have. And so I went through and did the thing. And I realized pretty quickly that when I got to college, I wanted to jump off the engineering curve onto the business curve, right? From an income standpoint, because people who got a business degree made less money than engineers in the beginning. But then eventually the people who were running the business made more money. And so I was trying to figure out how I was going to hop from one curve to the other. So I go get the degrees and stuff. Because again, a 5-year-old me, I had to figure out how to make the money so that I could have the Nikes. But at that point it went from Nikes to cars and big houses and all the other stuff, right? But that was the reason, because I felt like if I had enough money to do what I wanted to, then potentially maybe one day I could go do the thing that I wanted to do. I felt like they were mutually exclusive. My mom was really smart in the concept of lifestyle is determined by income. But she didn't say that. She said I needed to get a job. Right. And so when I was in between my freshman and sophomore year, I think I had a job working at the physical fitness center, the health center. And I still remember it was like 4:00 on a Sunday and the gym closed at 4:30. And I locked the door and I went to my room. And at 4:15, somebody came to lift weights or run on the treadmill. And because I locked up early, they went and complained. And sure enough, I get the knock on the door. Why are you not there? Your shift isn't over until 4:30. And I said, man, can't nobody do a workout in 15 minutes? And he said, that doesn't matter. We pay you for your time. And I knew right then that I need to figure out how to decouple my time from money. And so that next conversation on the stoop led to the place where I wanted to figure out how to earn income that I didn't have to work for. And it took me going through all these different jobs and being all these different places to lead me to the stoop so I could meet the guy who wanted to buy the same project that I wanted to buy. And that's how this thing came together, man, believe it or not.
Wow. Well, you definitely took the linear path, Jerome. It sounds like.
I
No,
went around the mulberry bush to
that's
grandma's
right.
house and back.
For sure, man, definitely. But yeah, no, that's an inspiring story, and thanks for sharing that with us. I wanted to back up and extract a few lessons learned, because there's a lot of stuff in that story. What would you tell some couples or early folks who are just getting started, right? And maybe just getting inklings of this, maybe understanding, boy, this like corporate thing is just not, this may not be for me. I know that when I was in that spot, Jerome, like I didn't know where to go. You had the get up and go, you had the hustle, you had like, you basically had a bunch of experience behind you, and you had some stuff that you already worked through, right? To get to that point, to make the decision, all right, real estate's the right thing for me. But what would you say to someone who's starting out that's realizing it seems hopeless? What would you
It
say?
is it
It is
is
hopeless.
hopeless in the
Yeah.
beginning, right? Because here's the thing, right? They're like, look, you don't know what you don't know, right? And this is the place where the experienced investor sees the newbie and they do one or two things. They say, I don't want anybody to pick my brain. You can stay as far away from me as possible. Or they say, hey, look, there's some sharks in the water and you got to be careful. Here's some things you need to think about. And I think we have to, and what you're doing is brilliant, by the way. We talked about the show in the beginning and we'll come back to the show. Like, I was the kid who listened to 40 hours of content each week trying to figure out how to get into the game because I didn't know any better. Right. And when you're smart and you've had success in the past, and you know that all the information is out there for free, you just try to eat it all and consume it all and then go off and apply it. In hindsight, I realized that is the stupidest thing I ever could have done because look, man, there are, I don't know, let's call it 100 multifamily investing podcasts. And everybody has a different angle because they have to differentiate their product. And what you get, like when you pick up the ball or when you pick up your puzzle, is not going to be the experience of Jerome or Derek or Sophie or anybody else that you listen to, right?
Yeah.
And what is truly valuable is having a cohesive end-to-end system that walks you from how do I introduce myself to people to how do I exit this deal and actually make money, right? Because this is very different from buying a house where you just have to buy the house for less than what you sell it for. In this space, you got your cost basis. It's very much like a bond. You got your cost basis, you buy it, and then you have to operate it in order for it to make money. And the hope is that it makes more money when you sell it than when you bought it. Because if you did, then it's usually going to be worth more. But everybody skips that part, especially on podcasts. They go from, you got to buy the deal and here's how you raise money to, oh, you sold it and now we 2x the money in 5 years. Look at this money multiplier and blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff's marketing, right? And so for the people who are out there and they're trying to learn how to navigate it, whether it's with themselves or with a partner, the most important thing you can do to get help is to get educated. Because you're talking about deploying hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars into a piece of property with the hope that when you exit it, it'll be worth more than what you paid for it. And I call it a hope because when you're getting in, you don't know what you don't know. And it working out is almost, it's not as likely as you being able to turn on your light switch, right? Like most people think that electricity is a given. Yeah. And that it only goes out if there's a storm. But there's so many things that happen between the power plant and your light switch that you have no idea about. And while you're on the outside looking into multifamily, it may seem like, oh, I paid the light bill, I just turned the lights on. Very similar situation. And so getting educated is a place where you find your hope because it builds your confidence because you understand what you're actually looking at. And then from there, I think the other three things that investors are trying to overcome after knowledge would be finding deal flow, because leads and deals are not the same thing, right? Even though they have the same letters. And then you need experience. This is a piece that I was missing, the guy in the house who finally partnered with me. And then you need capital, because people will go in and think they need the money first because they're going to buy something. The money's important, but it's not important until you get the big money, which is usually bank financing, right? And so you need the capital, you need the experienced partner that's going to get the capital, and then you need the actual deal, because the people who have experience don't really like spending their time looking for deals. And so this is a place where you can insert yourself and be a valuable partner. You have the knowledge, so you can find the deal. Once you have the deal, you control destiny, because the people who are interested in making money are attracted to the deal. And then the capital comes behind a proven operator with a great deal.
Yeah, Jerome, thank you so much. I just love how you laid that out and just made it so clear for us to understand, especially our listeners who are just getting started on that journey. And so I just wanted to ask you too, Jerome, let's go to the mindset piece, because I think this is the part where we kind of hopped on the boat a little bit later than we could have. And so what advice would you give during this whole journey for new investors? Like, what were like non-negotiable mindset things that really helped you get you through the hard times and get you to where you are now?
Yeah, the hard times.
Mhm.
So I guess the first thing is knowing that, being humble enough to know that what you've already done doesn't matter.
Mm.
It's like moving from middle school to high school, because I can assume that everybody that's listening to this has done at least that piece. So you go from being the big dog to the little dog, and people may pick on you. The cool factor is a little bit off. They may tell you that there's a pool in the basement, because that's what we did to all the freshmen at our high school, right? And you go on these wild goose chases trying to find the thing, and then you get to the basement, and they're like, "Oh no, they moved it to the roof." And so people go try to, anyway, like being humble enough to know that you don't know. As soon as you feel like you know, then you can't learn, right? And your success in corporate, or your success in whatever business you ran, none of those things actually matter when you come into this space. And there are a lot of people who are interested and willing to help you if you come across as somebody who's genuinely interested in learning, and you are not trying to take from people without offering something in exchange. Nobody owes you anything, right? They don't have to help you. They don't have to go to lunch with you. They don't have to let you buy a cup of coffee so you can pick their brain. Like, none of that stuff is owed to you. But a humble heart who's curious, who has childlike curiosity, will always get the ear of a seasoned investor, because they know a couple of things. One, there's people out there who will actually take advantage of them. And so it's important to help them navigate those waters. And two, even if they wanted to buy every deal that came available, they couldn't. And so there's opportunities for that. And I think the third one that most people won't talk about is, once a new person actually finds a deal, if you help them early in their process, they're going to bring that deal to you, because it's too big for them to do on their own. And so all of those create opportunities for folks to monetize. But, and it's a big but, it only happens if you come through with a humble heart, because people are looking for that. If you know it all, it's a problem.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And it just really sounds like that was what creates the foundation for that successful business. And it's the relationships that sustain the overall success. Is that right?
Yeah. And so I guess the next place I would go is, you're going to have to partner with somebody to get into the space. It's like a fraternity or sorority, right? And somebody's got to bring you in if you want to get that bank financing. And so what I think the big difference maker is your partners.
Mhm.
And so if you partner with people who you don't actually understand their challenges, if you don't understand what they do under stress, if you just are willing to partner with anybody, it's like marrying somebody who you just met on a blind date.
Mhm.
Literally, right? You're tying your finances together, right? You're committed to executing a business or operating a business. And if you don't know the quirks, if you don't know what to expect, then it's really difficult to demonstrate or exhibit trust, right? Because there's no predictability there. And so it begins to unravel, and it starts with the lack of communication, and then it degrades to a place where you're pulling out this operating agreement, trying to figure out how to get out of this thing, realizing that if you do it right now because the business isn't performing optimally, that somebody's going to take a loss, trying to figure out how you're going to make them take the loss because it's their fault that the thing isn't working. And it looks very similar to what a divorce looks like, except you have a prenup.
Mhm.
And that part is where the majority of deals fail, a broken partnership.
Yeah, Jerome, I've seen a lot of folks try to transition into multifamily and just can't seem to pull it off because they come from a place where they're a lone wolf. That's something you can do in single family. And as a matter of fact, that's what the most successful operators do, right? They work things themselves and eventually start outsourcing portions of it, which is what you do in the multifamily space. But you can be very successful doing it by yourself. But I've found that the best operators and the best people out there that run multifamily properties are the ones that know how to basically get along with others, you know, because that's really what it is. Like, as soon as you can get along with someone, then there's a basis of trust that starts to get built. And then when that trust builds, that's when things start flying, right? That's when you're able to close deals. That's when you're able to work with other people. They understand where you're coming from. You understand where they're coming from. And it's all about that communication. So I just want to double back down on that because that was something that was really big for me to take away from this.
Jerome, I have another question just to dovetail on that. It's like when you're so, we're talking about like these relationships when you're in partnership. They're like you said, they're literal marriages. What happens though when you have a lot of money tied up, a lot of time investment into it, and the relationship goes sour? Like, what advice would you give to people who are just kind of like in a really hard spot? Where like what skills, what resolution skills that do they need to get through that?
I, I go back to before you get in. I go back to the prenup. I go back to the operating agreement.
Mhm.
You have to write the operating agreement as if you were at war with your arch nemesis.
Yeah.
You have to, because when it's all said and done, everybody's friends, it's all amazing in the beginning, but you're not dissolving a partnership because everything's great and everybody's on the same page on the back end. And what you can end up happening is you have a terrorist. And so when everybody sees that that document is written with some teeth and that there is a real ramification for them not doing things well, not being a good partner, not communicating, not staying in the game, not showing up when the property or the team needs you to show up, then you can actually use that as leverage to get people to stay on the same page. You know, the beauty and the lack of beauty of a marriage is, you know, the way that it's written is the person who's the breadwinner gets to support the person who's not the breadwinner in alimony and child support and all the other things. Right. And so, in concept, if there isn't love for that person anymore, then the person has zero incentive to actually come up and do their spousely duties
Correct.
because they just get a payday and they get taken care of in the future. Well, if you have a prenup in place, then that changes the dynamic to force people, incentivize people to do the right thing. And that is why the operating agreement is so important, because if you haven't been friends or connected for a really long time, and part of the reason I only partner with people that I've known for over a decade is because of that. I want to know what happens when a person's stressed. I
Mhm.
want to know if we come up short and we need to put some money in an operating account, that they're not going to charge 14 or 15% interest for the money to be in the account, or try to reallocate um, the percentage of ownership for lending money for a quarter or something to the deal. So, really getting to know the people at a deep level, and then having an operating agreement to make sure that as life changes, as things change,
Mhm.
they are still incentivized to be on their best behavior, I think is the way that you protect yourself, because the money is real, right? The majority of people who are doing this aren't using after tax dollars when they start out. They're usually using some form of retirement dollars, even if they cashed out their 401k to do it.
Right.
And so we're talking about, and if they're not doing that, they're using equity out of their primary residence. And so those are the two biggest investments that people have. And so we're talking about real impact in a real way. And you absolutely positively have to protect yourself. And this is why doing it in tandem or a partnership, right? Spouses doing it together is really important, because, if the investment goes bad and one spouse doesn't know, then it's like, oh, you said this, that.
Mhm.
Instead of, we were in agreement and alignment, we both had the opportunity to review everything that was presented, and we made this decision jointly. Like, that's just a totally different game.
Mhm.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Jerome. I think that that's a beautiful thing and really important for people to understand that sometimes you need a cold splash in the face. And, I really think that if you have the right partners involved in the beginning, they all know that that's there for the good of the group. So if you come into this and another person is like, no, we don't need an operating agreement, that's a red flag, a big, big red flag. I don't even know if the bank will let you close without an operating agreement, but if it's something that gets put together like that's, that has no legal basis, or it's just something that was like a one-page document that someone put together, that's a problem. So the best partners are the ones that are willing to do it right with you, even though there's already a good relationship there. So my advice, and I just wanted to see if you would agree with this, is that always be on the lookout for these types of red flags before you enter the partnership. If you see anything, if you see something weird, then just know that you're gonna have to live with that for a while.
Yeah, I I've been in bad partnerships. And what I will tell you is that it's always when somebody, oh yeah, we don't need to paper that. We don't,
Correct.
and it's because they want to make up the rules later based on how they feel. And I think the piece that I've really struggled with the most is those folks are really emotional, and depending on how they feel that day determines on what's fair and what's not.
Mhm.
And so we need to do it when everybody likes each other, and write a really course document so that people don't ever want to pull that out and go through that process.
Yes, sir. Wow, well said.
Yeah.
So let's jump into multifamily, okay? And I want to explore a little bit about your experience in multifamily. Let's talk about some of the deals. Let's talk about after that first deal, right, that you got with the bank, with those partners that you got in. Talk about your growth trajectory after that, because I want to give a little bit of inspiration to people, and let people know what amazing things you're up to now. Let's dig into that. What is your acquisition criteria? What do you look for nowadays? Just talk a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, acquisition criteria is really interesting. So we we do two things, right? We're in the middle of a development deal that's 120 units here in Greensboro, North Carolina. We only buy Greensboro, North Carolina. Um, and if we're buying something that already exists, we're looking for a C class asset in a B neighborhood, with the expectation that we can make that asset a B. We like to buy from mom and pops. And when I say mom and pops, it's not just like mom and pop is, some people kind of have these pictures of folks just kind of bebopping along. What we're looking for is somebody who has a majority of their net worth tied up in a property, and that property isn't cash flowing as much as it used to. And
Hmm.
so they're looking for a way to unlock that equity. And the way they unlock that equity is selling it to me. And we don't buy things from brokers the vast majority of the time because we found that the pro formas aren't actually accurate and the pricing is outrageous. And so we're looking to only do off market deals with where we're direct to seller, and the opportunity for us is really tied into operations. So one or two things is happening. One, they kept rents artificially low. And when I say low, it's usually more than $150 from market rent because they wanted to stay full. And then two, they're paying for things that we believe that the residents should be paying for. And if we can find a situation where those two things are happening, then we get really excited about the property.
Yeah.
We've slowed down pretty dramatically in our acquisition just because we're seeing things trade and at what we consider to be really high cost basis, and we're not really sure where prices are going to settle. I know that people are making decisions today to buy something that they're going to try to sell in 5 years. The issue that I think most people are going to run into is the cap rate and the interest rate on the exit. And the assumption that they make is dramatically going to change their exit price. And if they're right, kudos, mazel tov. If they're wrong and the cap rate is lower than what they need, you can talk about hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars the wrong direction.
Mm.
And so that thing that you said was going to be a 10% IRR or a 10% annual return, however you want to look at it, can be -1.
Hmm.
And preservation of capital is our top priority. Then we think about profit.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And Jerome, how do you, so when say you're educating your investors about, because like you said, like there's no crystal ball for the future. So when you're educating your investors, how are you having this conversation with them that, okay, your 100 grand can either like magnify or not. So yeah, what would you say about that?
My conversation is I can lose all your money. Like the worst case scenario is I lose all your money, and you have to write a check for us to get out of the deal.
Mhm.
That's what I tell the people who sign the loans with me. For the people who may not sign a loan, that last piece will never actually be a risk for them, but they can't lose everything they put in the deal. I mean, for me, I consider that all equity to be risk capital, and that if you buy it at the right place, then you shouldn't never be in a place where you have to write a check to get out. But business plans do go awry. Property managers don't perform. People don't pay rent. I can keep going down the list. And so there are situations where really bad things happen. And so we have to prepare for that and then talk about the upside. But I never pretend that a person can't lose all their money. We are investing. This is not a insurance policy. It's not a treasury bond. We're buying a piece of real estate with the intention to increase its value, but we could be completely wrong and lose every penny that you give us. And if you're okay with that, then we can move forward. If you're not, then we should stop and make sure that you understand the investment. And this goes back to the education piece that we talked about, right? If you can't evaluate a model, if you can't figure out what levers they're pulling in the Excel file to create the 15% IRR that everybody promises with
Yep.
the 8 pref, then you're putting yourself in a really bad situation. And, when you talk about investors, sophisticated investors terrify me because they may not actually know how to evaluate the model. And when you see people say, oh, this one has a 15.8% return and this one has a 17.2 return, And this one has a 15.3 return. I'm going to pick the one in the middle because the return, I think, will get it. And they have no idea what the cap rates mean or how reasonable the rent increases are or
Or who the
if the
operator is.
expenses are rare.
Yeah.
I mean, you can keep going down the list of all the different variables, right? I don't want their money. And so I guess the last place I will go is I don't care how much money a person has
Mhm.
ever, right? If you can't add any intellectual capacity to the deal, I don't want to be your partner.
Mhm.
I don't, because the one thing that I missed from corporate America was having people on my team who actually cared about the same thing I cared about. And the way that you get that figured out is for it to have people put money in your deal. But I want thought partners. I don't want people who just put money in. I'm not
Yeah.
looking for dumb doctors, as some people say.
That's yeah, that's great. And Jerome, I can't let you, we can't end this call without you sharing what the red pill is. And also, I really, really want to learn about, the model that you have that you share about living a centered and purposeful life.
Yeah, so the red pill is our model for centered life. It's an homage to the movie The Matrix, where the main character Neo is in that fateful moment with Morpheus, and he offers him a red and a blue pill. The blue pill is basically ignorant bliss. You just continue down the path of the American dream and all the other stuff. And then the red pill is being offered the truth and to see how the world really works and to be able to step outside of all the programming and all of the I'll call it smoke and mirrors that most of us experience in this life. And so I wanted to live outside of that, and I want to help other people find their freedom outside of the matrix so that they can change the life of the people who come behind them and those folks that are close to them. And so, like my mom sucked all the innocence out of me when she told me I needed a job, I want to share that same message with folks, but tell them that they need an income stream, right?
Mhm.
You need an income stream that's going to afford you the lifestyle that you want to live. And how you want to do that doesn't really matter to me, but I think the most effective way to do that is buying a business. Now, a business that's got real estate backing it, I think allows you to get max leverage. And so that's what the apartment buildings are. Some people think they're just buying a piece of real estate, but that's not what it is. Apartment buildings have P&Ls, right? And so that makes them a business. And then they've got the real estate, which is a hard asset, which will allow the banks to give you a whole lot of money, a really high leverage with a really low interest rate. And so for me, that's the magical chef. And within the red pill, there's 6 levels. It starts with self-image, then moves to relationships, from relationships to work, work to prosperity, prosperity to significance. I skipped one. Health. All right. So self-image, relationships, work, health, prosperity, and significance. We do them in that order because we don't want people to go backwards. The self-image, the relationships, and the work create all the stress in your life. All of it. And I'm waiting for people to show me a different place that it comes from, but I haven't had anybody to do it yet. But I want to argue with your listeners if they got one. All right. So once we figure out the stress, then we can work on health. We work on health because you want to get rid of that. I got to take the edge off, right? Usually when somebody says I got to take the edge off, they're going to do something that's not healthy. They're eating sugar, they're consuming some type of narcotic or drug or alcohol. They're doing something to make life less stressful. And so those self-destructive habits are negatively impacting their health. And so we want to get those out the way and then build to take you to that next level. And then prosperity comes after health, because if you have prosperity before you have health, you spend all your money trying to get your health. So my goal isn't to get people to go backwards. We want to keep rising to the next level. I believe that you need prosperity, and I think everybody should have it, because when you're on the plane and they say you need to put your mask on first, it's because they want you to be in good standing, good shape before you start working on other people. Because you can't really give others what you don't have. And so that prosperity leads to overflow or abundance. And then out of your overflow or abundance, you make your significance play, which in our opinion is the only real success.
Yeah.
So that's the 6 levels of the red pill. And we think it's a model that will help you live a fulfilled life. When I was in corporate, I made a lot of money. I had a lot of cars, 6,000 square foot house, and I still felt empty on the inside. And so when I wanted to do something different, what I realized was making a difference in the lives of others was the only way that I was going to become immortal, right? Because a little bit of me going into you, or you teaching that to your kids, it keeps going and going. And those ideas, those frameworks that allow people to live a better life are the things that make you memorable and allow you to have a true impact in the world.
Love it.
Oh, so good. So good. Yeah. Give us that
Yeah,
pill.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jerome, last question before we dive into our rapid round is knowing what you've know now, being on your entire journey, if you saw yourself as a child saying, Mom, I want to be a garbage man, what would you tell your young self?
You need an income stream, not a job. The faster you figure out how to create money without having to trade your time for it, the more freedom you'll have.
Ah, man, good stuff, Jerome. Really good stuff. There's so many gems in here. One of the things that when you were talking with Sophie's previous question was you glanced over it. You said you cannot give people what you don't have in terms of mindset. I like to think of that in terms of like a tree. You can be a sapling, right? And you can give away what you have, but then you'll never grow roots. If you grow roots, right, and you become you get this big tree that's got like a huge trunk and really strong, firm, imagine all the shade and the fruit you can drop, to everyone that wants to stand next to you. That's kind of the way that I look at it as well. And I think that is a complete parallel with what you're saying there. And I just want to double down on that because that's how I've been really trying to grow. That's been my motivation, so I can provide fruit to other people. A lot of people just give, right? And they give things and they have nothing left for themselves. And I did that for a little bit, but I'm realizing that middle way of like taking care of yourself and then taking care of others once you know best is the absolute way to go, man. So it's good stuff.
It is.
Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap the show up, man. We had some great takeaways, and I really appreciate you being here. It's been awesome to see, hear everything about your story, and now we're gonna wrap this up with our rapid round. So do you want to do it?
Yeah. So the rapid round, it's 5 questions that are meant to be answered pretty quickly, and we'll start. We'll start there. So the first question is, what book has had the biggest impact on you and why? And this is outside of Rich Dad or the Bible.
Yeah, those are the go-to for most people.
They are.
Mine's is going to be the most impactful for 2020, which is Sizing People Up by Robin Dreet.
Oh, I just downloaded that book. I got another recommendation from it today. And every time you get 2 different recommendations in the same book in the same week from 2 different people, I think that's one to read. Awesome.
Nice. All right. And the next one is, if people wanted to emulate your success, what's the first actionable thing that they could do to follow in your footsteps?
Read The 4 Agreements by Paulo Coelho.
Nice. And what small thing do most people not know about you?
Where do I begin? I hate doing podcasts and public speaking and meetups and all of the things. So I'm only here because I've consumed so much content And I feel like I owe it to those folks who are ahead of me, who choose to listen to this stuff for continuing education, and the folks who are coming behind to help speed up the process for them. If they can really think about the 4 things that every real estate investor tries to overcome and solve them in that order, it literally will save them a year that it took me to figure it out. Knowledge, deal flow, experience, and capital. That's the order you have to solve the stuff in. If you try to do it any other way, it'll end up making you go back to get the other thing. But if you go in that order and you have a deal and you can take it to an experienced person, the capital will follow. You don't have to worry about that. But most people will just skip over that stuff. So yeah, this isn't my jam. I just do it because I know how much value I've been able to glean from other people. And I don't want to keep that. I want to keep the ecosystem. I want to keep the sharing going.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here. And the next question is, how do you like to unwind and restore your creative juices?
Oh man, so this is being recorded, so I won't give one answer. I'll give you the other answer, which is I like to meditate.
Oh.
Love that, man. Good answer.
We'll hear the other one offline.
Yeah.
All right, last question, Jerome, is what is your favorite vacation spot?
Oh my gosh, there's been so many amazing places in the Caribbean. If I had to pick one, I would probably say Jamaica was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had, just because I got to swim in the luminous lagoon and climb down Rivers Falls and just go to all these different locations that I had no idea really existed. So that's what I'll go with.
Awesome.
Nice.
Very cool. Well, Jerome, it's been a pleasure having you on, buddy. Thank you so much for your time and hopping on with us. We're glad that you're here. And before you go, why don't you tell a little bit more, or tell the folks how they can get a hold of you or whatever you have to offer if they want to learn more about you and what you got going on.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to do that. So jeromemyers.co is the best place to find out about all the things we have going on. And we do have a multifamily investing like quick start guide for people who want to learn more about the space and why we prefer joint ventures over syndications and a bunch of other cool stuff. So jeromemyers.co is the best place to go.
Excellent. So you guys go look them up on that website. We'll go ahead and link to that in the notes as well, so you guys don't have to scramble for it. But once again, Jerome, thank you so much for being on. Inspiration, great stories. Just we hit it all, man. So thank you so much for being on.
Derek, Sophie, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share with your audience.
Absolutely. And for you listeners who have been with us for the whole length of this podcast, I really want to thank you. And please, wherever you're listening to this or watching it, please like, subscribe, comment, engage with us, because we want to hear how we're doing. We want to know if this content is really like turning the needle for you or moving it for you. We have wonderful guests like Jerome on all of our other podcasts you can get on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we just want to make sure that we get more interaction so we can work our way up that algorithm, get more experience to more people so that more people can find out about Jerome and all of our other tremendous guests. So thank you so much for listening. This is Derek.
And this is Sophie.
We are signing off for today. Thanks, everyone. Have a great one.